Welcome into this Wednesday edition of Armchair Analysis. I'm your host, Tyler Isley, and here we are again with another team preview. UCF Knights are on the board today. And this is a team that has really as many question marks as you could ask around a program that's kind of resetting, if you will. This is a team that last year went 4-8, 2-7 in Big 12 play. Was a team that averaged 30.4 points per game. Good enough for top 50. 49. That's the best offense we've covered so far from last season. Points per game allowed, 26.9. 82 points per game allowed. And 0.7 turnover margin. Negative 0.7 turnover margin per game. Good for 117th in the country. Again, this is UCF Knights 2025 season preview. I thank you guys for tuning in here on the channel. It's been a busy week, and again, I apologize for maybe the lesser quality of video over the last couple of days. I really do apologize. Unfortunately, was not expecting to be here. Still in Ohio, taking care of family matters at the moment, but still taking the time to get these videos out because they are important to me, and as they should be important to all of you, especially UCF fans, getting to know kind of what the country thinks about your team and your program moving forward. If you're new around here, please leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. We got new episodes every day going forward until we complete these previews. 1 p.m. Eastern time every single day until we get done. And we've been doing pretty good. We missed one day so far, unfortunately. Again, this family emergency really took center stage, as it should. The family always should come first for anybody, but we're back and sorting things out one day at a time, really, and doing what we can to make these as good as we can, working with what little I have up here, unfortunately. So, like I said, I thank you guys. Ask you, please leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. The content does look better, typically works out a lot better, a little more complete as we go through these, but nonetheless, there's no less quality and no less effort put into these. I spent probably, I don't know, upwards of an hour and a half, 2 hours working on getting these previews ready. I already kind of knew where the direction I wanted to go. But, again, putting these together still takes a little bit of time. And, again, I thank you guys so much for the patience and the willingness to stick around. So, with that said, let's go ahead and talk about UCF in 2025. Again, I already recapped 2024. They were 4-8, 2-7 in conference, averaged 30 points per game, gave up 26 points per game, 27 really, and averaged about a turnover in the minus per game. This ultimately led to the parting of ways with Gus Malzahn. Now, a lot of people will say that this is one way or the other. I think this is more of a mutual agreement that things were just not working out the way they were expected to. Obviously, the influx of transfer portal acquisitions through the course of the last few years and the way they were trying to build this program really didn't work out. And I think that Gus Malzahn landed himself in a better spot. I think UCF, in a sense, landed themselves in a better spot. We'll talk a little bit about why that is going forward. They bring in Scott Frost to be the new head coach, and of course, we all know how this went the first time around. They were really successful. They claim a national championship in this area and in the original Scott Frost era. One of the biggest things and one of the biggest things that stuck out to me was a team that couldn't close the deal last year, had multiple come-from-behind losses, had multiple games where they just blew leads or blew opportunities. A team that couldn't finish the deal brings in a head coach that has not been able to finish the deal at the Power 5 level. Scott Frost has struggled notoriously. It's been well documented, his struggles at Nebraska as a head coach, and really as he's been able to try to put things together for the Nebraska program, they just seem to fall apart further. We will see if he can kind of rekindle a flame, maybe going back to his original stomping grounds as a head coach anyways. What can he do? He brings back, and man, I wish I would have wrote this a little easier for me to read. I assume that says Steve Copper. I'll have to double check on that here in a second while I'm going through. But he also brings in Alex Grinch of Oklahoma and USC fame, of course, with that was with Lincoln Riley, and then went over to Wisconsin. Things did not really go any better there. There we go. Steve Cooper. My bad. Yeah, so here we go. First season an offensive coordinator for Steve Cooper. Sorry, not Copper. Unfortunately, as those of you who've been around a while, you know I can't read my own handwriting, and that's case in point. But Alex Grinch, I think that brings a lot of question marks. Will the UCF defense improve? I mean, this was a defense that did not play very well last year in all reality, especially in Big 12 play. And they gave up a lot of big leads. They just blew a lot of opportunities, really. And when we sit here and say Alex Grinch is the new defensive coordinator, we sit back and we wonder, is that going to mean anything? Is that going to change anything? Is Alex Grinch going to find a way to improve? Because we've seen Alex Grinch as a Big 12 defensive coordinator before, and it wasn't pretty. I mean, it didn't go good at any point in his tenure at Oklahoma. Never went well at USC, whether that was Pac-12 or Big 10. Well, really just Pac-12, because obviously he left to go to the Big 10 to be the Wisconsin safeties coach, if I'm not mistaken. And that did not go well either. So we sit back and question, is UCF going to be that kind of team defensively this year? That is a question to be determined. This team recruiting ranked 42nd in the country, and that's pretty much well in put with where they've been over the last handful of years. Portal ranked 85th in the country. They did a good job in the portal. I don't think you should misunderstand what that ranking really means. But this is a team that I think could do really well going forward. You look at this offense, again, led by Steve Cooper. Year one offensive coordinator from Nebraska, coming with Scott Frost. And he's going to be having to choose between two quarterbacks that I think could be really successful. I like Taven Jackson. We've seen him at Indiana a little bit, and he's done really well. Cam Fancher, coming from FAU, and apologies if I mispronounce that name. I'm not fully sure how to say it if it's not Fancher. But I love either of these guys. I think that either one of these two could come in and be relatively successful and know how to lead the offense. Taven Jackson is my personal favorite right now to be the starter, and granted, we're talking about this in June. This could 100% change and go a totally different direction later on. Who knows? I mean, truthfully, who knows in college football how things may change. But either of these two, I think, are solid options to take in year one. You get Jaden Nixon, transfers over from Western Michigan. I thought he was a really solid backup to Buckley up there the last couple of years. And then you get Miles Montgomery returning into the program. Going to be another guy that I think can do really good. It's a good running back duo. And it's going to be hard, truly, to replace last year's production on the ground. But I think they've done a really good job setting a good baseline. RJ Harvey's a tough guy to beat. I mean, that's a playmaker that you typically don't have at UCF. And if you do, you're very fortunate, especially in today's era, to not lose him to the portal. RJ Harvey going to the draft, you got to find somebody else who can take over and be that guy. And I think Jaden Nixon is the guy that you're going to look to do that. At wide receiver, you got Marcus Burke. He's transferring in from Florida. DJ Black comes in from Limestone. I think he's going to be a really solid player and turn into a really key producer on this program and in this team. And then you get Dwayne Thomas Jr. coming over from UNC Charlotte, who I think can also add a little bit to it. And then, of course, Dylan Wade at tight end. And then a portal-heavy class, all upperclassmen coming in to the offensive line. The Scott Frost era, Steve Cooper era, it's going to start off, I think, successful on offense. I don't know if they're going to be a 30 points per game team like they were last year. But I can see this team putting up 20 to 25 and being relatively successful. I don't see any reason. I think that whoever you choose at quarterback, puts you in a good position to succeed going forward. When you turn around and look at the defense, this is a little bit more questionable. Again, Alex Grinch is somebody who I think a lot of people question what he's going to be and how he's going to command a defense, especially returning to the Big 12. We saw it. We've seen it at Oklahoma. It didn't go well. I said that earlier, and I'll say it again. It just did not go well. And it makes you wonder, how do we trust that in 2025? Knowing what he was at Oklahoma, knowing that a team with more talent on the roster, he couldn't put it together. It makes you wonder. This is a team that returns 3 of 11 players from last year's roster. They're going to be led by transfer Jair Brown coming over from LSU, a guy who was highly touted coming out of high school, going to be a highly touted player going into UCF. But a lot of questions. And again, it remains the biggest question. How do we trust Alex Grinch in 2025? How do we trust Alex Grinch in the Big 12? How do we trust Alex Grinch? Plain and simple. And, you know, when I was writing my thoughts here, I didn't really write my thoughts based off the schedule. It was pretty simple for me. A team that couldn't close the deal in 2024 hires a coach who could never close the deal at Nebraska. The reuniting of Frost and UCF makes sense, but will he find the same success as his first tenure? The biggest thing behind that is obviously the coaching staff doesn't really feel proven, doesn't feel like it's going to make a lot of sense to many people. And again, the inability to win one-possession games the last handful of years in Nebraska versus the inability to win a one-possession game last year if you're UCF. It's not a very good combination. We very rarely see something like that sort itself out. And very rarely do we see that work out to where they're together anyways. It's just a rare combination, and a combination that I feel like has a lot of question marks behind it. So with that said, let's take a look at the schedule here, if I can. Apparently I didn't double check to make sure that that was going to be good enough. So let me double check to make sure that's going to work. And there we go. All right, so we got it up on the screen, and you can see here it's a tough schedule. This is a schedule that has question mark after question mark in terms of how you're going to play, or even how you're going to win games. You know, Oklahoma State, if you saw that, you already kind of know what I'm thinking with Oklahoma State. But everything else, you really don't know how I feel because I haven't covered any other team on this schedule. With Jacksonville State and NC A&T, I think you can safely lock those as wins. But when you look at the rest of the schedule, there's not a single guaranteed win on the schedule to include Oklahoma State. I know how down I am on them. If you haven't seen that video, it's the second video I've done on this series. I know how I feel about Oklahoma State, but I don't think this is a guaranteed game at any rate. It's really hard. And when you look at this team, their over-under sits at 5.5. Keep that in mind going forward. They are dead last, tied with Oklahoma State in the Big 12, odds to win, plus 5,500, plus 100,000 to win a national championship. Likely not happening. I say likely because nothing's impossible in college football. Just very unlikely. So we go ahead, and I already talked about it. I think you get 2 wins right off the bat. You beat Jacksonville State, and you beat NC A&T. And I apologize. I messed one thing up completely already. I've actually messed 2 things up completely already. The Jacksonville State game is on August 28th. It's a Thursday night game. And that Houston game is on November 7th, Friday night. Apologies. I did not. I overlooked that when I was doing the schedule, so forgive me. But beyond that, you get these 2 games. They're going to be a couple games, really tune-ups. Obviously, and if Rich Rod was at Jacksonville State still, we might be talking about an upset special type game, but I'm not worried about it. I think that there's too much to overcome for Jacksonville State, especially a team with less talent trying to figure out the transfer portal. And then you get NC A&T, who I think is really good, and don't be surprised if this is a closer game. NC A&T held Wake Forest to a tough battle last year. It wouldn't surprise me, but I just don't see it. I don't think that's going to happen, so we get through that. You get a bye week on September 13th. I completely messed these dates up, as a matter of fact. I have completely screwed this up, so forgive me. I'm going to read off my paper and we'll go through this. I'm terribly sorry. But it is 11 o'clock, and I have to go to bed to get ready for other stuff, so my mistake. Moving on, UNC is going to be on September 20th. After a bye week. That game, I'm going to go ahead and give a loss to UCF. I think UNC is going to be a better team than a lot of people expect, and while I've been very clear and really very open about the fact that I don't think that Bill Belichick is going to work at North Carolina, it doesn't stop me here. So, with that said, I'm really big into the idea of UNC getting the win on the road in Orlando in the Bounce House on September 20th. Moving on to September 27th. I didn't mess it up too bad, apparently, because there's actually that bye week helps me out. At Kansas State, I'm going to go ahead and give another loss. I've been a very big fan of Avery Johnson. I've been very clear that I like what he brings to the table. And even more so, I like what the defense brings to the table for Kansas State. And I think that that's going to be kind of the story of this one on the road in Manhattan on September 27th. I think the Wildcats of K-State's going to be able to play their brand of football, do what they do the best, and ultimately walk away winning this football game. To move on to the road, October 4th, where Kansas gets the win. You know, I'm not high on Kansas, but I just think that they are a little bit better, and I trust Lance Leipold as a head coach. I trust their defense more than I trust UCF giving them the win. You go on the road to Cincinnati, we've talked about it. I'm not the biggest fan of Scott Satterfield, and I'm personally not the biggest fan of a lot of things about this program. One thing I love is Brennan Sorsby, and I think when we're talking the quarterback game, Sorsby is going to be the guy. One of the bigger surprises in the Big 12 in 2025. Speaking of surprises at quarterback in the Big 12, it's also going to be a guy named Nico Marchiol of West Virginia. Now, I'm not saying what I said last year with West Virginia, which was 10-2. I predicted that. I was far from correct. I'm aware. This game, to me, just screams Rich Rodriguez. And it feels like he has his hand on everything that this game brings to the table. Whether it's physicality, whether it's a solid run game, which I expect a lot from West Virginia this year. And again, it's the changes they made defensively that didn't make them worse. They didn't necessarily get better. They lose some guys that I think they wish they would have kept, especially Jeremiah Trotter. But as a whole, this is a team, this is a program who, even though they're bringing in a lot, there's one guy that I would trust in a lot of situations to bring together a roster like this, a hodgepodge of players from pretty much anywhere, and that's Rich Rod. So in saying that, I'm trusting him. I'm trusting Nico Marchiol. Again, this is a quarterbacks conference. And when we look at a quarterbacks conference, the Big 12 is certainly the place you want to look. And West Virginia has exactly what you're looking for. Speaking of quarterbacks, you go on the road to Baylor after a bye week on October 25th or whatever day of the week you want to call it that week. They go on the road first in November to play Baylor on the road, and I'll be honest, I think that this is going to be one of those games where you're starting to get a little uncomfortable where you're at if you're UCF. You're on a 5-game losing streak. You're going into this game on the road, losing 5 games straight, and wondering how you're going to bounce back. You know, you're playing a team in Baylor who, you know, Sawyer Robertson, I think, is going to be a all-conference caliber player. Whether or not he makes that list is going to be up to voters and not me. But this is a team as a whole. I love what Dave Aranda's doing. Again, defense. Shockingly, you know, 10 years ago we wouldn't have been talking about defense in the Big 12. But we sit here today and we say that Dave Aranda coaching Baylor, that they're going to be one of the best probably in the conference. And I don't doubt that. So they're going to fall down to 2-6 on the road against Baylor. You're going to go on the road to Houston, and I love Willie Fritz. I think I've been very clear about that here on this channel. I've been very clear really anywhere I've talked about Willie Fritz. that I am a fan of Willie Fritz. I had to turn the mic because I feel like it wasn't really on me. But in saying that, this is going to be a Friday night game in the Bounce House. In between 2 road games, what feels like a must-win at this point, because you need 4 straight to go bowling. Feels like a must-win. Feels like a team that can finally start to put things together. And it feels like Houston's the most susceptible out of this entire schedule to lose a game. So saying that, that's exactly what we're doing. We're going to take UCF November 7th. Remember that correction of the date. We're taking UCF over Houston there in the Bounce House. You move on the road against Texas Tech. This is a team that's favored to win a conference here, and maybe even favored to make a playoff. We're going to go ahead and give that to them. If you saw the Oklahoma State video, you know I'm giving them a win here. Not a fan of Oklahoma State, not loving what they are, not loving UCF either. This is kind of just who's at home, who do I trust? Likely, my trust would typically be with Mike Gundy. Home field advantage, we'll go with UCF. You go on the road to play BYU. That's November 29th, not November 28th. That's one of my other few mistakes that I didn't realize I only made a few mistakes. But we look at this game on the road against BYU, and, you know, this could be totally changed based on the situation with Parker Retzlaff. Sorry, that's the first time I made that big mistake. Jake Retzlaff. Not Parker. Jake Retzlaff. It's the first time in talking about BYU I've made that mistake. But it's going to be a tough decision to make if you're BYU, if you're the program, and it's going to be tough to determine how you can replace him should he not be playing. I'm not going to give light to what is going on because I don't like to report on things that are not finalized, and I don't like to talk about things that I don't want to. Reckless speculation is one of my least favorite things in sports reporting or talk in general. I don't like to take part in it personally, especially if I don't know any different or I can't prove any different. What I can say is that there is a legitimate concern that Jake Retzlaff does not play at BYU this year, based on allegations to be that have been brought about. So in saying that, it's really hard to get a feel for this game because if it's not Retzlaff, I don't know how I feel. I am assuming, until told otherwise, that it will be. In that assumption, I'm going to go ahead and take BYU here. Closing the season for UCF at 4-8, 2-7. This is very similar to how I feel about Purdue, but in a totally different way. And what I mean by that is I talked about Purdue, kind of figure out what you have and move on and build off of it. It's very similar, but in the regard that this team does not grow, this team does not feel like they get better. As a matter of fact, they feel like they are worse with just... This is a team last year that I expected to have maybe 8 wins. And I thought a lot of them because I thought a lot of Gus Malzahn. I really approved of what they brought to the table as a program and as a coaching staff and as a roster. I love RJ Harvey. I was a fan of him last year. I'm a fan now. And KJ Jefferson coming in, I thought was going to be a success. Things just did not work out the way they should have for UCF last year. And now we're looking at a brand new coaching staff and a brand new roster, and we got to sit here and say, do we believe this is better than previous seasons? The answer, I can't say, is yes. I'm not going to say it's no, because I don't fully buy that it's not. But I don't believe it's better, and I don't believe they improved. I don't believe the coaching staff is better. I just have a hard time buying this team improvement. It's no disrespect to Scott Frost. I think that he's a coach that succeeds where there's not expectations. or not high expectations. Now, UCF has grown, and thanks in large part to Scott Frost, and I think that knowing that he's going to have a little bit more leeway and maybe even a little less pressure upon himself because of what he's already done. But this is a team that still wants to keep themselves in conversations, wants to keep themselves in position to win conference championships and put themselves in the playoffs. Knowing how college football is going and the direction it's going, there is not a doubt in my mind they are not going to be okay with 4-8 or less. This is year of figuring out who you are, and I think this is a make or break year for Alex Grinch as defensive coordinator. I do not believe you can continue this trend of relative mediocrity to even worse than mediocrity or mediocre, or whatever word you want to use. I don't believe you can continue it that way. Change needs to happen. Things need to turn around, and I believe it's possible. My hopes are not high. That's the way I would venture to put it as we look at things today. So with that said, I appreciate you tuning in to this. If you've made it this far, thank you. If you have made it this far, sorry, please leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what you would say and what you would add to what I've put together so far here for this UCF team. Let me know who I may have left out of this conversation, who you would add, and who I need to look out for as I go forward. Because, again, these things can change. These are not set in stone until I do my conference preview, my full conference preview, and give you my standings at the end of August as we head into week 1. Or week 0, actually, is when those come out. But they don't change beyond that. So until then, things may change around or switch around a little bit. But truly, they don't change that much. So I ask that you let me know what I may have missed. Let me know. Again, you know your team better than I do. So it's hard for me to sit here and say that this is a set in stone. This is who they are, and this is what you need to take from them. Because, again, they're not my favorite team personally, but they're, there's always somebody that knows a specific team better than I will. It's just how it is. But I appreciate that feedback and letting me know that things may not, something I may have missed, or things may not be quite as doom and gloom as I feel they are for UCF. But if you got this far and you enjoyed and felt like you learned something, or maybe walked away a little more informed about the 2025 college football season, I implore you to leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Leaving a like and subscribing, completely free. It just helps me out, helps these videos get to more eyes and more ears, and allows people to tune in and leave their comments. Let me know how silly my predictions are, because, again, it's all opinion based, and that's what we're here for. I put my opinions out there because they're different, I think, than a lot of other people's, and I think I do a good job of still producing a informational show without being like everybody else. So with all that said, again, thank you guys for tuning in. If you got this far, leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. We'll see you all tomorrow. And tomorrow, Big Ten, Northwestern. I got the paper right here. You're probably hearing it in the background. Northwestern Wildcats enter 2025 with a lot of question marks and a lot of wondering about what they will be in the new Big Ten and where they fit in. So make sure you tune into that. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited, actually, to talk about what they are and what I personally think of them going forward. So, again, tomorrow, Northwestern, and we will see you guys then with that preview. Again, no outro. I'll get that figured out for the next time I travel. But for right now, I don't have one. So we'll just see you again then with Northwestern.